You're listening to Midwest Coven Cast presents Weekend Reads. I'm Marilyn of Midwest Coven Cast, and each week I will be reading to you, dear listeners, occult works that are in the public domain. All of this I do with the goal of helping each of us grow in our knowledge and practices. Here in Season 1, we will be making our way through Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic, published in 1531. I hope you enjoy this week's installment. Chapter 14. Of the Spirit of the World, what it is, and how by way of medium it unites occult virtues to their subjects. Democritus and Orpheus and many Pythagoreans, having most diligently searched into the virtues of celestial things and natures of inferior things, said that all things are full of God, and not without cause. For there is nothing of such transcending virtues, which being destitute of divine assistance, is content with the nature of itself. Also they called those divine powers which are diffused in things, gods, which Zoroaster called divine allurements, Synesius symbolical enticements. Others called them lives, and some also souls, saying that the virtues of things did depend upon these, because it is the property of the soul to be from one matter extended into diverse things about which it operates. So as a man who extends his intellect unto intelligible things, and his imagination unto imaginable things, and this is that which they understood when they said, viz., that the soul of one thing went out and went into another thing, altering it and hindering the operation of it, as the diamond hinders the operation of the lodestone, that it cannot attract iron. Now seeing the soul is the first thing that is movable, and, as they say, is moved of itself, but the body, or the matter, is of itself unable and unfit for motion, and doth much degenerate from the soul. Therefore, they say, there is need of a more excellent medium, viz., such a one that may be, as it were, no body, but, as it were, a soul, or, as it were, no soul, but, as it were, a body, viz., by which the soul may be joined to the body. Now they conceive such a medium to be the spirit of the world, viz., that which we call the quintessence, because it is not from the 4 elements, but a certain first thing having its being above and besides them. There is, therefore, such a kind of spirit required to be, as it were, the medium whereby celestial souls are joined to gross bodies, and bestow upon them wonderful gifts. This spirit is after the same manner in the body of the world, as ours is in the body of man. For as the powers of our soul are communicated to the members of the body by the Spirit, so also the virtue of the soul of the world is diffused through all things by the quintessence. For there is nothing found in the whole world that hath not a spark of the virtue thereof. Yet it is more, nay, most of all, infused into those things which have received or taken in most of the Spirit. Now this Spirit is received or taken in by the rays of the stars, so far forth as things render themselves comfortable to them. By this Spirit, therefore, every occult property is conveyed into herbs, stones, metals, and animals, through the sun, moon, planets, and through stars higher than the planets. Now this spirit may be more advantageous to us if any one knew how to separate it from the elements, or at least to use those things chiefly which do most abound with this spirit. For these things, in which this spirit is less drowned in a body and less checked by matter, do more powerfully and perfectly act, and also more readily generate their like. For in it are all generative and seminary virtues. For which cause the alchemists endeavored to separate this spirit from gold and silver, which being rightly separated and extracted, if thou shalt afterward project it upon any matter of the same kind, i.e., any metal, presently will turn it into gold or silver. And we know how to do that, and have seen it done. But we could make no more gold than the weight of that was out of which we extracted the spirit, foreseeing that gold is an extense form, and not intense, it cannot beyond its own bounds change an imperfect body into a perfect, which I deny not, but may be done by another way. Chapter 15. How we must find out and examine the virtues of things by way of similitude. It is now manifest that the occult properties in things are not from the nature of the elements, but infused from above, hid from our senses, and scarce at the last known by our reason, which indeed come from the life and the spirit of the world, through the rays of the stars, and can no otherwise but by experience and conjecture be inquired into by us. Wherefore he that desires to enter upon this study must consider that everything moves and turns itself to its like, and inclines that to itself with all its might, as well in property, viz., occult virtue, as in quality, viz., elementary virtue. Sometimes also in substance itself, as we see in salt, for whatsoever hath long stood with salt becomes salt. For every agent, when it hath begun to act, doth not attempt to make a thing inferior to itself, but as much as may be like and suitable to itself. Which also we manifestly see in sensible animals, in which the nutritive virtue doth not change the meat into an herb or a plant, but turns it into sensible flesh. In what things, therefore, there is an excess of any quality or property, as heat, cold, boldness, fear, sadness, anger, love, hatred, or any other passion or virtue, whether it be in them by nature, or sometimes also by art or chance, as boldness in a wanton. These things do very much move and provoke to such a quality, passion, or virtue. So fire moves to fire, and water moves to water, and he that is bold moves to boldness. And it is well known amongst physicians that brain helps the brain, and lungs the lungs. So also it is said that the right eye of the frog helps the soreness of a man's right eye, and the left eye thereof helps the soreness of his left eye, if they be hanged about his neck in a cloth of its natural color. The like is reported of the eyes of a crab. So the feet of a tortoise helps them that have the gout in their being applied thus, as foot to foot, hand to hand, right to right, left to left. After this manner they say that any animal that is barren causeth another to be barren, and of the animal especially the generative parts. So they report that a female shall be barren if, betimes, drink be made of a certain sterile animal, or anything steeped therewith. If, therefore, we would obtain any property or virtue, let us seek for such animals, or such other things whatsoever, in which such a property is in a more eminent manner than in any other thing. And in these let us take that part in which such a property or virtue is most vigorous, as if at any time we would promote love. Let us seek some animal which is most loving, of which kind are pigeons, turtles, sparrows, swallows, wagtails, and in these take those members or parts in which the vital virtue is most vigorous, such as the heart, breast, and also like parts. And it must be done at that time when these animals have this affection most intense, for then they do provoke and draw love. In like manner, to increase boldness, let us look for a lion or a cock, and of these let us take the heart, eyes, or forehead. And so we must understand, which Psellus the Platonist saith, viz., that dogs, crows, and cocks conduce much to watchfulness, also the nightingale and the bat and horned owl, and in these the heart, head, and eyes especially. Therefore it is said, if any shall carry the heart of a crow or a bat about him, he shall not sleep till he cast it away from him. The same doth the head of a bat dried and bound to the right arm of him that is awake. For if it be put upon him when he is asleep, it is said that he shall not be awakened till it be taken off from him. After the same manner doth a frog and an owl make one talkative, and of these specially the tongue and heart. So the tongue also of a water frog, laid under the head, makes a man speak in his sleep. And the heart of a screech owl, laid upon the left breast of a woman that is asleep, is said to make her utter all her secrets. The same also the heart of the horned owl is said to do. Also the suet of a hare, laid upon the breast of one that is asleep. Upon the same account do animals that are long-lived conduce to long life, and whatsoever things have a power in themselves to renew themselves conduce to the renovation of our body, and restoring of youth, which physicians have often professed they know to be true, as is manifest of the viper and snake. And it is known that hearts renew their old age by the eating of snakes. After the same manner the phoenix is renewed by a fire, which she makes for herself, and the like virtue there is in a pelican, whose right foot being put under warm dung, after 3 months there is of that generated a pelican. Therefore some physicians, by some certain confections made of vipers and hellebore, and the flesh of some such kind of animals, do restore youth, and indeed do sometimes restore it to so, as Medea restored old Polias. It is also believed that the blood of a bear, if it be sucked out of her wound, doth increase strength of body, because that animal is the strongest creature. Chapter 16. How the operations of several virtues pass from one thing into another, and are communicated one to the other. Thou must know that so great is the power of natural things, that they not only work upon all things that are near them by their virtue, but also besides this, they infuse into them a like power, through which by the same virtue they also work upon other things, as we see in the lodestone, which stone indeed doth not only draw iron rings, but infuseth a virtue into the rings themselves, whereby they can do the same, which Austin and Albertus say they saw. After this manner it is, as they say, that a wanton, grounded in boldness and impudence, is like to infect all that are near by her, by this property whereby they are made like herself. So Paul saith to the Corinthians, evil communications doth corrupt good manners. Therefore they say that if any one shall put on the inward garment of a wanton, or shall have about him that looking glass which she daily looks into, he shall thereby become bold, confident, impudent, and wanton. In like manner they say that a cloth that has about a corpse hath received from thence the property of sadness and melancholy, and that the halter wherewith a man was hanged hath certain wonderful properties. The like story tells Pliny. If any shall put a green lizard, made blind together with iron or gold rings, into a glass vessel, putting under them some earth, and then shutting the vessel, and when it appears that the lizard hath received his sight, shall put him out of the glass, that those rings shall help sore eyes. The same may be done with rings and a weasel, whose eyes, after they are, with any kind of prick, put out, it is certain are restored to sight again. Upon the same account, rings are put for a certain time in the nest of sparrows or swallows, which afterwards are used to procure love and favor. Chapter 17. How by enmity and friendship the virtues of things are to be tried and found out. In the next place, it is requisite that we consider that all things have a friendliness and enmity amongst themselves, and everything hath something that it fears and dreads, that is an enemy and destructive to it, and, on the contrary, something that it rejoiceth and delighteth in, and is strengthened by. So in the elements fire is an enemy to water, and air to earth, but yet they agree amongst themselves. And again in celestial bodies, Mercury, Jupiter, the sun, and moon are friends to Saturn, Mars and Venus enemies to him. All the planets besides Mars are friends to Jupiter. Also all besides Venus hate Mars. Jupiter and Venus love the sun. Mars, Mercury, and the moon are enemies to him. All besides Saturn love Venus. Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn are friends to Mercury, and Sun, Moon, and Mars his enemies. Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn are friends to the Moon. Mars and Mercury her enemies. There is another kind of enmity amongst the stars, viz., when they have opposite houses, as Saturn to the Sun and Moon, Jupiter to Mercury, and Mars to Venus. And their enmity is stronger whose exaltations are opposite, as of Saturn and the Sun, of Jupiter and Mars, and of Venus and Mercury. But their friendship is the strongest who agree in nature, quality, substance, and power, as Mars with the Sun, as Venus with the Moon, and as Jupiter with Venus. As also their friendship whose exaltation is in the house of another, as that of Saturn with Venus, of Jupiter with the Moon, of Mars with Saturn, of the Sun with Mars, of Venus with Jupiter, and of the Moon with Venus. And of what sort the friendships and enmities of the superiors be, such are the inclinations of things subjected to them in those inferior. These dispositions, therefore, of friendship and enmity are nothing else but certain inclinations of things of the one to another, desiring such and such a thing if it be absent, and to move towards it unless it be hindered, and to acquiesce in it when it is obtained, shunning the contrary and dreading the approach of it, and not resisting in or being contented with it. Heraclitus, note, sometimes given as Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher who lived about 500 BC. He was known as the weeping philosopher, so impressed was he by the weakness of mankind. Only fragments of his philosophical work, Periphysiosis, on nature, remain. These fragments go to show that Heraclitus held fire to be the first principle of all phenomena, and the original substance out of which they have all been evolved. Agrippa, in the above, throws further light on his philosophy. The fragments of the teachings of Heraclitus were collected at Berlin in 1805, while Agrippa wrote some 300 years earlier. Therefore, being guided by this opinion, profess that all things were made by enmity and friendship. Now the inclinations of friendship are such in all vegetables and minerals, as is that attractive virtue or inclination which the lodestone hath upon iron, and emerald upon riches and favour, the jasper upon the birth of any thing, and the stone acates upon eloquence. In like manner, there is a kind of bituminous clay that draws fire and leaps into it wheresoever it sees it. Even so doth the root of the herb aproxus draw fire from afar off. Also the same inclination there is betwixt the male palm tree and female, whereof, when the bough of one shall touch the bough of another, they fold themselves into mutual embraces. Neither doth the female palm tree bring forth fruit without the male, and the almond tree, when she is alone, is less fruitful. The vines love the elm, and the olive tree and myrtle love one the other, also the olive tree and fig tree. Now, in birds and animals, there is amity betwixt the blackbird and thrush, betwixt the crow and heron, betwixt peacocks and pigeons, turtles and parrots, whence Sappho writes to Phaon. To birds unlike oftentimes joined are white doves, also the bird that's green, black, turtle loves. Again, the whale and the little fish, his guide, are friendly. Neither is this amity in animals amongst themselves, but also with other things, as with metals, stones, and vegetables. So the cat delights in the herb catnip, and rubbeth herself upon it, and there be mares and Cappadocia that expose themselves to the blast of the wind. So frogs, toads, snakes, and all manner of creeping poisonous things delight in the plant called passflower, of whom, as the physicians say, if any one eat, he shall die with laughing. The tortoise also, when he is hunted by the adder, eats origanum, and is thereby strengthened, and the stork, when he hath eat snakes, seeks for a remedy in origanum. And the weasel, when he goes to fight with the basilisk, eats rue, whence we come to know that origanum and rue are effectual against poison. So in some animals there is an inbred skill and medicinal art. For when the toad is wounded with a bite of poison of another animal, he is wont to go to rue or sage and rub the place wounded, and so escapes the danger of the poison. So men have learned many excellent remedies of diseases and virtues of things from brutes. So swallows have showed us that celandine is very medicinal for the sight, with which they cure the eyes of their young, and the pyet, when she is sick, puts a bay leaf into her nest and is recovered. In like manner, cranes, jackdaws, partridges, and blackbirds purge their nauseous stomachs with the same, with which also crows allay the poison of the chameleon, and the lion, if he be feverish, is recovered by eating of an ape. The lapwing, being surfeited with eating of grapes, cures himself with southern wood. So the hearts have taught us that the herb dittany is very good to draw out darts, for they, being wounded with an arrow, cast it out by eating of this herb. The same do goats in candy. So hinds, a little before they bring forth, purge themselves with a certain herb called mountain osier. Also, they that are hurt with spiders seek a remedy by eating of crabs. Swine also, being hurt by snakes, cure themselves by eating of them. And cows, when they perceive they are poisoned with a kind of French poison, seek for cure in the oak. Elephants, when they have swallowed a chameleon, help themselves with the wild olive. Bears, being hurt with mandrakes, escape the danger by eating of ants. Geese, ducks, and such like watery fowl cure themselves with the herb called wall sage. Pigeons, turtles, and hens with the herb called pellitory of the wall. Cranes with bulrushes. Leopards cure themselves, being hurt, with the herb called wolfsbane. Boars with ivy. Hinds with the herb called sonara. Chapter 18 of the inclinations of enmities. On the contrary, there are inclinations of enmities, and they are, as it were, the odium and anger, indignation, and a certain kind of obstinate contrariety of nature, so that anything shuns its contrary and drives it away out of its presence. Such kinds of inclinations hath rhubarb against choler, treacle against poison, and sapphire stone against hot boils and feverish heats and diseases of the eyes. The amethyst against drunkenness, and jasper against flux of blood and offensive imaginations. The emerald and angus castus against lust. Acates against poison. Peony against the falling sickness. Coral against the ebullition of black choler and pains in the stomach. The topaz against spiritual heats, such as are covetousness, lust, and all manner of excess of love. Like inclination is there also of ants against the herb oreganum, and the wing of a bat, and the heart of a lapwing, from the presence of which they fly. Also oreganum is contrary to a certain poisonous fly, which cannot endure the sun, and resists salamanders, and loathes cabbage, with such a deadly hatred that they destroy one the other. So cucumbers hate oil, and will run themselves into a ring, lest they should touch it. And it is said that the gall of a crow makes men afraid, and drives them away from where it is, as also certain other things. So a diamond doth disagree with the lodestone, that being set by it, it will not suffer iron to be drawn to it. And sheep fly from frog parsley, as from some deadly thing. And that, which is more wonderful, nature hath pictured the sign of this death in the livers of sheep, and in which the very figure of frog parsley, being described, doth naturally appear. So goats do so hate garden basil, as if there were nothing more pernicious. And again, amongst animals, mice and weasels do disagree. Whence it is said that mice will not touch cheese if the brains of a weasel be put in the rennet. And besides that, the cheese will not be corrupt with age. So a lizard is so contrary to scorpions that it makes them afraid with its very sight, as also it puts them into a cold sweat. Therefore they are killed with the oil of lizards, which oil also cures the wounds made by scorpions. There is also an enmity betwixt scorpions and mice, wherefore if a mouse be applied to a prick or wound made by a scorpion, it cures it, as it is reported. There is also an enmity betwixt scorpions and stalibers, asps, and wasps. It is reported also that no thing is so much an enemy to snakes as crabs, and that if swine be hurt therewith, they eat them and are cured. The sun also being in Cancer, serpents are tormented. Also, the scorpion and crocodile kill one another. And if the bird ibis doth but touch a crocodile with one of his feathers, he makes him immovable. The bird, called bustard, flies away at the sight of a horse, and a hart runs away at the sight of a ram, as also of a viper. An elephant trembles at the hearing of the grunting of a hog, so doth a lion at the sight of a cock, and panthers will not touch them that are anointed all over with the broth of a hen, especially if garlic hath been boiled in it. There is also enmity betwixt foxes and swans, bulls and jackdaws. Amongst birds also some are at perpetual strife one with another, as also with other animals, as jackdaws and owls. The kite and crows, the turtle and ringtail, Agrippas and eagles, harts and dragons. Also amongst water animals there is enmity, as betwixt dolphins and whirlpools, mullets and pikes, lampreys and congers. Also the fish called porcontrel makes the lobster so much afraid that the lobster, seeing the other, but near him, is struck dead. The lobster and conger tear one the other. The civet cat is said to stand so in awe of the panther that he hath no power to resist him or touch his skin. And they say that if the skins of both of them be hanged up one against the other, the hairs of the panther's skin fall off. And Orus Apollo saith in his hieroglyphics, if any one be girt about with the skin of the civet cat, that he may pass safely through the middle of his enemies, and not at all be afraid. Also, the lamb is very much afraid of the wolf, and flies from him. And they say that if the tail or skin or head of a wolf be hanged upon the sheepcote, the sheep are much troubled, and cannot eat their meat for fear. And Pliny makes mention of a bird called Marilyn, that breaks crow's eggs, whose young are so annoyed by the fox, that she also will pinch and pull the fox's whelps, and the fox herself also, which when the crows see, they help the fox against her, as against a common enemy. The little bird, called a linnet, living in thistles, hates asses, because they eat the flowers of thistles. Also, there is such a bitter enmity betwixt the little bird called Escalon and the ass, that their blood will not mix together, and that at the braying of the ass, both the eggs and young of the Escalon perish. There is also such a disagreement betwixt the olive tree and a wanton, that if she plant it, it will either be always unfruitful or altogether wither. Note: this illustration of natural antipathy, said to exist between a wanton and an olive tree, as well as other illustrations herein of the occult virtues of things, may be regarded as somewhat fanciful, but the reader will be able to bring to mind plenty of natural phenomena that fully prove the leading truths that Agrippa here seeks to convey. For instance, the writer knows one person of whom it may be justly claimed that every plant grows that he touches, while his mother, rendering the same care, finds it impossible to raise a plant. All women know, who have had the experience, that at certain times each month they cannot make pickles that will not spoil. The explanation of these things are found in the occult virtues of nature, the inherent sympathy, amity, or antipathy in all things to all other things, which Agrippa so admirably sets forth. A lion fears nothing so much as fired torches, and will be tamed by nothing so much as by these. And the wolf fears neither sword nor spear, but a stone, by the throwing of which, a wound being made, worms breed in the wolf. A horse fears a camel, so that he cannot endure to see so much as his picture. An elephant, when he rageth, is quieted by seeing a cock. A snake is afraid of a man that is naked, but pursues a man that is clothed. A mad bull is tamed by being tied to a fig tree. Amber draws all things to it besides garden basil, and those things which are smeared with oil, betwixt which there is a kind of natural antipathy. Chapter 19. How the virtues of things are to be tried and found out, which are in them specifically, or in any one individual, by way of special gift. Moreover, thou must consider that the virtues of things are in some things according to the species, as boldness and courage in a lion and cock, fearfulness in a hare or lamb, ravenousness in a wolf, treachery and deceitfulness in a fox, flattery in a dog, covetousness in a crow and jackdaw, pride in a horse, anger in a tiger and boar, sadness and melancholy in a cat, lust in a sparrow, and so of the rest. For the greatest part of natural virtues doth follow the species. Yet some are in things individually, as there be some men which do so wonderfully abhor the sight of a cat, that they cannot look upon her without quaking. Which fear, it is manifest, is not in them, as they are men. And Avicen tells of a man that lived in his time, whom all poisonous things did shun, all of them dying, which did by chance bite him, he himself not being hurt. And Albertus reports that in a city of the Euboeans he saw a wench who would catch spiders to eat them, and being much pleased with such a kind of meat, was wonderfully nourished therewith. So is boldness in a wanton, fearfulness in a thief. And upon this account it is that philosophers say that any particular thing that never was sick is good against any manner of sickness. Therefore they say that a bone of a dead man, who never had a fever, being laid upon the patient, frees him of his quartan. There are also many singular virtues infused into particular things by celestial bodies, as we have showed before. Chapter 20. The natural virtues are in some things throughout their whole substance, and in other things in certain parts and members. Again, thou must consider that the virtues of things are in some things in the whole, i.e., the whole substance of them, or in all their parts, as that little fish Echinus. Note: the belief that the Echinus, a fish of the remora, or sucker family, has the power of stopping ships, was formerly quite prevalent. In Goodwin's translation of Plutarch's Morals, Volume 3, we find the following story. Caramominus, the Trallian, when we were at a very noble fish dinner, pointed to a little, long, sharp-headed fish, and the Echinus, ship-stopper, was like that. For he had often seen it as he sailed in the Sicilian Sea, and wondered at its strange force. For it stopped the ship when under full sail, until one of the seamen perceived it sticking to the outside of the ship, and took it off. Oppian says, describing its occult virtue, but though the canvas bellies at the blast, and boisterous winds bend down the cranking mast, the bark stands firmly rooted on the sea, and all unmoved as tower or towering tree. Pliny says, why should our fleets and armadas at sea make such turrets on the walls, and the forecastles, when one little fish is able to arrest and stay perforce, are godly and tall ships? National History, Volume 21, page 41. Ovid writes, there too is the little suckling fish, wondrous to behold, a vast obstruction to ships, and Lucan says the Echinus stops ships on the ocean, which is said to stop a ship by its mere touch. This it doth not do according to any particular part, but according to the whole substance. So the civet cat hath this in its whole substance, that dogs, by the very touch of his shadow, hold their peace. So Salandine is good for the sight, not according to any one, but all its parts, not more in the root than in the leaves and seeds, and so of the rest. But some virtues are in things according to some parts of it, viz. Only in the tongue, or eyes, or some other members and parts. So in the eyes of a basilisk is a most violent power to kill men, as soon as they see them. The like power is there in the eyes of the civet cat, which makes any animal that it hath looked upon to stand still, to be amazed, and not able to move itself. The like virtue is there in the eyes of some wolves, who, if they see a man first, make him amazed, and so hoarse, that if he would cry out, he hath not the use of his voice. Of this Virgil makes mention when he sings, Morris is dumb, hath lost his voice, and why? The wolf on Morris first hath cast his eye. So also there were some certain women in Scythia, and amongst the Illyrians and Triballians, who as often as they looked angrily upon any man, were said to slay him. Also we read of a certain people of Rhodes, called Telechines, who corrupted all things with their sight. Wherefore Jupiter drowned them. Therefore witches, when they would after this manner work by witchcraft, use the eyes of such kind of an animal in their waters, for the eyes, for the like effects. In like manner do ants fly from the heart of a lapwing, and not from the head, foot, or eyes. So the gall of lizards, being bruised in water, is said to gather weasels together, not the tail or the head of it. The gall of goats, put into the earth in a brazen vessel, gathers frogs together, and a goat's liver is an enemy to butterflies and all maggots. Dogs shun them that have the heart of a dog about them, and foxes will not touch those poultry that have eaten the liver of a fox. So diverse things have diverse virtues, dispersed variously through several parts, as they are from above infused into them according to the diversity of things to be received. As in a man's body the bones receive nothing but life, the eyes sight, and the ears hearing. And there is in a man's body a certain little bone, which the Hebrews call LVZ, of the bigness of a pulse that is husked, which is subject to no corruption, neither is it overcome with fire, but is always preserved unhurt, out of which, as they say, as a plant out of the seed, our animal bodies shall in the resurrection of the dead spring up. And these virtues are not cleared by reason, but by experience. Chapter 21. Of the virtues of things which are in them only in their lifetime, and such as remains in them even after their death. Moreover, we must know that there are some properties in things only whilst they live, and some that remain after their death. So the little fish Echinus stops the ships, and the basilisk and cataplepa kill with their sight when they are alive. But when they are dead, do no such thing. So they say that in the colic, if a live duck be applied to the abdomen, it takes away the pain and herself dies. Like to this is that which Archytas says, if you take a heart newly taken out of an animal, and whilst it is yet warm, hang it upon that hath a quartan fever, it drives it away. So if anyone swallow the heart of a lapwing, or a swallow, or a weasel, or a mole, whilst it is yet warm with natural heat, it shall be helpful to him for remembering, understanding, and for foretelling. Hence is the general rule, viz., that whatsoever things are taken out of animals, whether they be any member, the hair, nails, or such like, they must be taken from those animals whilst they be yet living, and if it be possible, that so they may be alive afterwards. Whence they say, when you take the tongue of a frog, you must put the frog into the water again. And if you take the tooth of a wolf, you must not kill the wolf, and so of the rest. So writes Democritus, if anyone take out the tongue of a water frog, yet living, no other part of the body sticking to it, and she be let go into the water again, and lay it upon the place where the heart beats of a woman, she shall answer truly whatsoever you ask her. Also they say, that if the eyes of a frog be before sunrising abound to the sick party, and the frog be let go again blind into the water, they will drive away tertian ague. As also that they will, being bound with the flesh of a nightingale in the skin of a hart, keep one always watchful without sleep. Also, the ray of the forkfish, being bound to the navel, is said to make a woman have an easy travail, if the ray be taken from the fish alive, and it put into the sea again. So they say the right eye of a serpent, being applied, doth help the watering of the eyes if the serpent be let go alive. And there is a certain fish or great serpent called Myrus, whose eye, if it be pulled out and bound to the forehead of the patient, is said to cure the inflammation of the eyes, and that the eye of the fish grows again, and that he is taken blind who will not let the fish go. Also the teeth of all serpents being taken out whilst they are alive, and hanged about the patient, are said to cure the quartan. So doth the tooth of a mole, taken out whilst she is alive, being afterwards let go, cure the toothache. And dogs will not bark at those that have the tail of a weasel that is escaped. And Democritus relates that the tongue of a chameleon, if it be taken from her alive, doth conduce to a good success in trials, and is profitable for women that are in travail, if it be about the outside of the house, for you must take heed that it be not brought into the house, because that would be most dangerous. Moreover, there be some properties that remain after death, and of these the Platonists say that they are things in which the idea of the matter is less swallowed up. In these, even after death, that which is immortal in them doth not cease to work wonderful things. So in the herbs and plants pulled asunder and dried, that virtue is quick and operative, which was infused at first into them by the idea. Thence it is that, as the eagle all her lifetime doth overcome all other birds, so also her feathers, after her death, destroy and consume the feathers of all other birds. Upon the same account doth a lion's skin destroy all other skins, and the skin of the civet cat destroys the skin of the panther, and the skin of a wolf corrodes the skin of a lamb. And some of these do not do it by way of a corporeal contact, but also sometimes by their very sound. So a drum made of the sound of a wolf makes a drum made of a lambskin not to sound. Also a drum made of the skin of the fish called rochette drives away all creeping things, at what distance soever the sound of it is heard. And the strings of an instrument made of the intestines of a wolf, and being strung upon the harp or lute with strings made of the intestines of a sheep, will make no harmony. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Midwest Coven Cast Presents Weekend Reads. Join me next week for the next installment as we continue through Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy or magic. For more information about Midwest Coven Cast, you can visit our website at midwestcovencast.com. You can also follow us on social media at Midwest Coven Cast on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook, or at Midwest Coven on Twitter. We hope to see you there. Until next time, Coven, blessed be.